Hey everyone. So I want to talk about China's role in the Iran war, in the war between the US and Iran. And you might think that that's a secondary matter, that China's sort of maybe in Iran's camp or standing with their arms folded, waiting to see where the chips fall, that they have some interests in Iran, they get their oil from Iran. But I'm going to show you that it goes far deeper than that. And Iran's involvement in every aspect of what's going on in this war, the negotiations, the ceasefire, all of this, China is pulling the strings. And I didn't fully realize this until I did some reading and did some deep diving over the last couple of days. And I want to unpack this for you. And what I'm going to show you is going to make a lot of things really make a lot of sense. So stick with me. We're going to go through a number of stories. I'll try to do it as quickly as possible. But keep it clear so that you understand that right now we are in a critical moment. And this has everything to do with the global conflict between the United States and China. So let's get to it. I'm going to, here, let me just pull up the relevant stories. Here we are, and share the screen, and there we go. Okay, so first of all, here's a piece from And magazine from Sam Faddis, a former high-ranking member of the CIA. Sam's a great guy, and he does tremendous deep dive work revealing important information that you don't find anywhere else. So you should probably subscribe to And magazine on Substack. But here's a piece that he published today. On March 1st, 2026, Iranian Shahed drones struck a U.S. command center at Port Shuaibah in Kuwait. 6 U.S. Army reservists from Iowa were killed. Dozens more were injured, suffering traumatic brain injuries and shrapnel wounds. No unclassified forensic examination of the remnants of the drones in this attack has been completed to our knowledge. More generally, however, the construction of Iranian Shahed drones has been documented extensively. And it has been well established that while these weapons are ultimately fully assembled in Iran, many, if not most, of their key components come from China. The engine used in the Shahed drone is a copy of the one originally designed in Germany. All of the engines are now made in China. Several different Chinese companies are involved. And then he lists a few of the companies. He says, one of them, Watchman Victory Technology, is so proud of its contribution to the construction of Shahed drones that it even includes imagery of the drone on its website for marketing purposes. In other words, while the United States was bombing Iran, Watchman was continuing to send marketing emails to Iran focusing on expanding sales. The Chinese don't just supply the engines for the Shahed, they send Iran microchips, semiconductors and circuit boards, navigation systems, GPS modules, gyroscopes, sensors, fiber optic cables for improved guidance and resilience against jamming, voltage converters and control systems, lithium-ion batteries and related power systems, carbon fiber, honeycomb composites, fiberglass, and aerospace-grade materials for airframes and wings, and antennas and dual-use parts like lenses, metal alloys, binders. These parts don't trickle in via some kind of ad hoc smuggling arrangement. They are shipped in bulk directly to Iranian factories. Hundreds of containers at a time are delivered. They used to come by sea directly to Iran. Now, because of the American blockade, the containers are offloaded in Pakistan and then trucked into Iran via supply routes opened with the Pakistani cooperation. I made a video about Pakistan and these overland routes a few days ago. You should probably go back and watch that. It's kind of volume 1 to this video here, but let me just sum it up. Here's a piece from last week. Well, a few weeks ago, actually, no, I'm sorry, from 3 weeks ago already. Pakistan takes calculated risk by opening overland routes for shipments to Iran. Islamabad's move provides a workaround to the blockade and benefits allies and its own economy, but risks angering the U.S. A new land bridge between Pakistani ports and Iran may provide a lifeline to Tehran. This is 3 weeks ago, while it is under U.S. blockade and redraw key Asian trade routes. An order by Pakistan's Ministry of Commerce designates 6 transit routes through the country's southwest, connecting Gwadar, Karachi, and nearby Port Qasim to the Iranian border crossings at Gabd and Taftan. I'm going to jump down here. There's an important piece of this where it talks about how the purpose of this really is to work around the blockade. Here we go. The U.S. Navy launched a blockade on April 13th, targeting all ships seeking to reach Iranian ports. More than 3,000 Iran-bound containers have been stranded at Karachi as a result. The order creates this new order in Pakistan 3 weeks ago, creates a formalized overland bypass around the naval blockade, a land bridge that could allow Iran's export partners, such as China, to send goods to the Iranian market via Pakistan without paying Pakistani import duties. Okay, so Pakistan actively opened these trade routes to help bypass the U.S. blockade, and a lot of that stuff is coming from China. And what is China shipping there? And I mentioned this, I asked this in the video that I made about Pakistan. I said, what's in those containers? Ostensibly, what Pakistan says is they're sending in humanitarian and food. No one's checking what's in these containers. They're coming from China through Pakistan into Iran, and they've opened up these trade routes since the blockade began, and not with American consent. And here he lists a bunch of Chinese companies. And then Sam goes on. None of this happens without the knowledge and assistance of the Chinese government. We know the names of the Chinese companies involved. Xi Jinping knows them as well. This is not some low-profile smuggling operation. This is support at the national level for Iran, even as its forces are engaged in combat with ours. The Chinese don't just help Iranians build Shahed drones. They also make sure the drones hit their targets. China has granted Iran access to its Beidou navigation satellite system, which is an alternative to the American GPS. It provides high accuracy positioning and navigation with encrypted signals. The Iranians aren't hoping to hit something when they fire a drone. They now have pinpoint accuracy. The Iranians also now use Chinese-made guidance chips and navigation modules in their drones. And he goes through some of the details of that. The Chinese have also made available to the Iranian high-resolution satellite imagery from companies like Mizar Vision, Earth-Eye, Changguang. During the recent summit in Beijing, Chinese leader Xi Jinping purportedly promised President Trump that he would not send weapons to Iran. Maybe there's a problem with the translation. Xi has been sending Iran weapons for a very long time, and he is continuing to do so. He's helping the Iranians kill Americans. And then you have this report here from Iran International. China keeps supplying drone parts to Iran and Russia despite U.S. sanctions. And this is from the Wall Street Journal from a couple of weeks ago. And it basically mentions the same thing, that these that the Chinese continue to supply drones to the Iranians. Now, I'm going to connect this, and this is where we start to really fill out the picture. So that's the starting point, okay, that we see that China is supplying weaponry, drones, high-level technology, access to navigation systems. They're providing that all in an ongoing way to the Iranians, and they're using these Pakistani overland trade routes to do it. But those trade routes are not just a temporary bypass for the blockade, as we'll see in a few minutes. But first, this is from today. Pakistan's army chief to visit Tehran today amid push for U.S.-Iran deal. Pakistan's army chief Asim Munir will travel to Iran today as part of ongoing Pakistani mediation in talks and consultations between Tehran and Washington over the war. Iran's ISNA news agency says Pakistan's interior minister arrived in Tehran yesterday for the second time in less than a week as Islamabad continues its push to reach an agreement. So you have the interior minister there a couple times in a week. You have the army chief going there now, and they want to help. If you've been watching, you know, Pakistan is the mediator, right? They're the go-between. And in the last video I made, I talked about the fact that, hey, wait a second, Pakistan gets 80% of its weaponry these days from China. It has a deep cooperation with China. We're going to go into that further here. And meanwhile, while all this is going on, also from today, Pakistan's prime minister is about to visit China. Pakistan's prime minister, Shehbaz Sharif, will head to China this weekend for talks with Xi Jinping, Beijing said on Thursday, without specifying whether the war in Iran would be discussed. They've both sought to mediate the Middle East conflict. And talks about the ceasefire agreement, but look down here. I mentioned this in my last video. China supports Pakistan. It's quoting here the Chinese ministry spokesperson, the Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson. Look what he writes here. this guy, Guo Jiakun. Guo added that China would work with Pakistan to make positive contributions to the early restoration of peace and stability in the Middle East. China supports Pakistan in playing a fair and balanced mediating role in promoting peace and ending the war. Pakistan's interior minister met with Mohsin Naqvi, met Sunday in Tehran with Iran's chief negotiator. They keep sending the interior minister. You might be wondering, why are they sending the interior minister to a foreign country? He's the interior minister, but Mohsin Naqvi is a Shiite Muslim interior minister in Pakistan. Pakistan's a Sunni majority country, so they send the Shiite guy. He's the go-between with the Iranians. China is Pakistan's largest trading partner and major investor, particularly through the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor that has poured tens of billions of dollars to fund massive transport, energy, and infrastructure projects. This visit comes just as Marco Rubio, is set to travel to India, Pakistan's neighboring rival. The two countries, China and Pakistan, also cooperate closely on defense, trade, and regional security. Last May, Islamabad used Chinese-made military hardware, including fighter jets, against India during a brief conflict. Their ties have strengthened further in recent years amid shifting geopolitical dynamics in South Asia, particularly in relation to India. Now, here's the Anadolu is the Turkish state-run media. Okay, so we're reading now, this is Turkish state-run media here, which also wrote a piece on the visit of the Pakistani Prime Minister and Xi Jinping that's supposed to take place this weekend. So this is also from today, and a lot of it is the same, but look what it says down at the bottom. China and Pakistan, so it quotes this guy Guo again, this spokesperson of the ministry. China and Pakistan are good friends and all-weather strategic cooperative partners. The two sides maintain close communication and coordination on major issues and help safeguard common interests to advance peace and stability, blah, blah, blah. And look at this, buried all the way at the bottom of the article. China and Pakistan have the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a flagship project of the Belt and Road Initiative comprising roads, power plants, and rail links connecting China's western Xinjiang region with the port of Gwadar in southwestern Pakistan. Okay, what's going on here? So in this piece from a few weeks ago, which is also from an Arab news outlet, from The National, which is a UAE news outlet, where it talked about those 6 new trade routes that they opened, it goes into some detail. Here we go. Until recently, Iran had been resisting discussions to open new overland trade routes with Pakistan. Why? Why did Iran not want to open overland trade routes with Pakistan? Although Iran never made its reasons explicit, Pakistani officials believe it was because Tehran wanted to shield Chabahar, an Iranian port project jointly developed with India, from competition with the Pakistani port of Gwadar, a Pakistan-China joint project less than 200 kilometers away. The U.S. blockade on Iranian ports, including Chabahar, however, appears to have changed Iran's calculus. After the war began, Iranian officials approached their Pakistani counterparts to restart talks on opening the land bridge. Interesting. And it talks about how the Chabahar port was a joint India-Iran project from more than 20 years ago. And I'll explain to you on a map what this was all about. Here, let's zoom in. Okay, so just zoom out a little bit. Here's Iran, here's Pakistan, here's China. You see Pakistan borders China and Pakistan borders Iran, okay? And in order to ship oil, so we all know that a lot of the Iranian oil goes through the Straits of Hormuz and it goes out to China. But how does it get to China? Well, China relies heavily on shipping that goes all the way down through here. It has to go through the Straits of Malacca. It has to go through some difficult waterways. And it's a very long route around. So China wants to create something called the Belt and Road Initiative. And the Belt and Road Initiative is a land route that could connect China to Europe through Turkey, Iran, and these countries here, Afghanistan, Pakistan, whatever's easiest to work with, or maybe the other stands up here, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan. China wants to have a land route that goes across. But China also has a need for the Iranian oil, the Gulf oil, to come to it in a quicker way. So China built, together with the Pakistanis, a port right here, the Gwadar Seaport. Okay? That's where the little red thing is here. And that way, the oil can come out of the Gulf, and it can go to the Gwadar Seaport, and then it can travel by land across into China. But it's not just about oil. A lot of stuff can travel that way. Okay? The Gwadar Seaport. Now, India also had an issue, which is that India and Pakistan are enemies. And India wanted to bypass Pakistan. So India jointly built with the Iranians, it was their initiative, they invested in this to build a port right here, Chabahar. Okay? So Chabahar and Gwadar are right next to each other. You see that? They're very, very close to each other. They're 200 kilometers apart, right? Which is just over 100 miles apart from each other. Okay, Gwadar and Chabahar, they're right near each other. So, but the Indians have been, in recent years, growing closer and closer to the Israelis. They're part of a different initiative for a land corridor to Europe that the Americans initiated called the IMEC corridor, the India Middle East corridor, the India Middle East Europe corridor, which runs across through the UAE, short water route, but runs across to the UAE and is supposed to run through Saudi Arabia, Israel, Cyprus, Greece, up into Europe. Okay, that's the IMEC corridor that India is meant to be a part of. But they invested in this port with Iran, and Iran was making money off of this port. And meanwhile, the Chinese invest in a port right next door in Pakistan. So when the United States started closing all the ports, and Pakistan had offered to create land routes across into Iran, Iran said to Pakistan, hey, wait, we can't use our ports down, our Chabahar port anyway. So maybe let's talk again about those land routes. And China wants those land routes because China wants to bring the Pakistanis and the Iranians into the Belt and Road Initiatives. Let me drill down on that a little bit further. So here, in this piece in Arab News is a Saudi outlet. It says here that Pakistan says it remained in constant contact with China during the Iran-Israel war. We'll get to that in a bit, but I want to start with the end of the piece here, where it talks about the Belt and Road Initiative. What it mentions in here basically is that, here it is. Pakistan and China have maintained close strategic cooperation across diplomacy, defense, infrastructure, and regional connectivity, particularly under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a flagship project of China's Belt and Road Initiative. Okay, so the Chinese want to take advantage of what's going on and say, and now they can advance the next stage of their Belt and Road Initiative. Or another way to look at this is that if the Iranian regime falls into Western hands, if the Iranian regime collapses or becomes controlled by Trump in some way, like a Venezuela style thing, or if it, of course, collapses and becomes just a pro-Western free society, either of those two options is bad for China. China wants the Iranian regime to survive, to have some independence, and to become part of the Belt and Road corridor that they're building through Pakistan, through Iran. And the blockade is actually serving their interests in this way, because the blockade has forced Iran into the arms of the Pakistanis to open up these land routes, which also is providing weapons and other supplies to Iran, as we saw before, from China. China's shipping things down through Pakistan into Iran. But they want to make this permanent. That's why Pakistan opened up 6 overland routes. They want to create a highway to bring goods from China through Pakistan into Iran and then beyond. Okay? Now, with all of that, look at this coverage. China, Pakistan helped mediate U.S.-Iran talks, Iran envoy says. Iran's ambassador to China, okay, said on Tuesday, that's 2 days ago, that mediation in talks between Tehran and Washington was the result of cooperation among Iran, Pakistan, and China. It wasn't the Pakistanis mediating. The Iranian ambassador to China says that it was a three-way cooperation of Iran, Pakistan, and China. Iran state media reported. Abdulreza Rahman Fazli said China did not welcome what he called U.S. tension-making in international waterways and had always emphasized secure shipping and regional stability. He added that a crisis in West Asia directly affected Chinese economic and strategic calculations. Now, here's this piece from this Saudi outlet. Pakistan says it remained in constant contact with China during the U.S.-Iran-Israel war. Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar said on Wednesday, that's yesterday, that Islamabad remained in close coordination with China throughout the recent U.S.-Iran-Israel conflict, highlighting deep strategic ties between the two countries amid efforts to promote regional peace and stability. Dar made the remarks while addressing Pakistan's Senate in the presence of a visiting Chinese parliamentary delegation as they marked 75 years of diplomatic relations. And it talks about how they have this close relationship because of the Belt and Road. During the recent Middle East conflict, the two countries also jointly promoted a 5-point peace initiative calling for a ceasefire, dialogue, protection of civilian nuclear infrastructure, safe navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, and adherence to the UN Charter. Throughout the conflict between the U.S. and Iran and Israel, we have been in constant touch with my counterpart, Foreign Minister, His Excellency Mr. Wang Yi, that's the Chinese Foreign Minister, as well as other colleagues from the region. He said he visited Beijing on March 31st, that's about a week before the ceasefire, at the invitation of the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, where the two sides developed the 5-point peace proposal, which means that what Trump agreed to bring about this ceasefire to negotiate was actually composed in China. It was written in China. We came up with a 5-point initiative for a peace plan in the conflict, and this has been accepted and endorsed by dozens of countries in the globe. The Deputy Prime Minister said the coordination between Pakistan and China at the United Nations, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and other international forums has been vital in defending the interests of developing countries and promoting global peace. Okay. Do you see what is happening here? Do you see it? Hello? China is arming the Iranians, but not just arming them, giving them access to all of their advanced technology for tracking and GPS and all this stuff that they're giving them and all these advanced chips. They're giving them all of this technology. They're giving them the drone technology. They're giving them the weapons. They are, with Pakistan, breaking the blockade, making the blockade less effective by opening up these trade routes across Pakistan, but they're also laying the groundwork for the advancement of the Belt and Road Initiative. And it's critical to them that this war end with the Iranian regime still intact. And that's why they want ceasefire negotiations. Let's bring it all to an end so that we can get an agreement signed so that the Iranian regime remains intact and China can continue to do what it's doing. But it also undermines India's interests in the region, because India has been moving more into the U.S.-Israel orbit. And this way, they simultaneously built these land bridges that Iran was hesitant about because they didn't want to double cross. They didn't want to undermine the port that they had built with the Indians. But now that port was rendered useless and the Indians don't seem so trustworthy anyway, they're now going into the arms of the Chinese and the Pakistanis with this land corridor, which is now part of the Belt and Road Initiative, and the Chinese get to advance their interests in the region, working hand in glove with the Pakistanis. The Pakistanis are basically the sock puppet of the Chinese in this situation. So it, of course, serves everyone well to have the Pakistanis be the mediators, because they're a Muslim country, and they are ostensibly more pro-Western, where China is more explicitly the adversary or the rival of the United States. It's a much safer play to have Pakistan be the one who is who's negotiating here, but Pakistan is working on behalf of the Chinese, and the Chinese are behind the lifeline that is being thrown to the Iranians. They're working on that lifeline round the clock. They're directing things. We also saw that news item in that last piece that I ran that they've been making statements praising the Pakistanis for their mediation efforts and telling them to ramp them up, to dial them up. That they're basically giving instructions to the Pakistanis. And notice where, what I quoted before, the Andalu agency, Chinese president to host Pakistani premier in Beijing as Beijing renews support to Pakistan on U.S.-Iran mediation. And this is in Turkish regime media. The Turks also are a critical component of the Belt and Road Initiative, because the Belt and Road is supposed to run from China through Pakistan, through Iran, up through Turkey. And the seaport piece of it, where you have to have a seaport, is Gwadar. This is all happening as part of this war. So China is at war with the United States in many different arenas. And one of them is this situation we're in right now. And the longer this goes on, this goes into the topic of the negotiations and the delays. I'm going to make a separate video today about where things stand with the negotiations. Keep all of this in mind as you follow the negotiations going forward. This is what's really happening. If you just watch the mainstream news and they talk about, oh, there's negotiations, and is Iran going to agree to the deal? Are they not going to agree to the deal? And the Pakistanis are mediating. This is the real story of what's going on. This is the real story. All right. Thanks for watching. I hope this made sense, and hope you found it beneficial. Please share with other people. Tell them what we're doing on this channel. I don't think you're going to find this type of analysis anywhere else. God bless.